Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Thursday, April the 18th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams. He's producing the program. If you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get on the show, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, it's toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So just here the past few minutes, it really has darkened here on Kenmount Road. Can barely see across the street to Kenmount Terrace. Cold, damp day, wintry conditions in parts of Central. So we're not quite home free into the springtime-ish weather, but soon will be, I suppose. All right, so for folks who are Toronto Maple Leaf fans, or folks who simply want to see people, hit some of these big milestones, like 70 goals. So as much as the Leafs tried last night to get Matthews his 70th, no such luck yet. 12 shots on net, and you could really see the team focused in on Matthews, and so be it. I mean, that's what the teammates are there for, to try to help their brothers try to hit some of these big targets, but no, and there's been only a handful of guys who've ever scored 70 in the NHL. It hasn't happened since 1993, when McGillney and Solani both scored 76, so the list includes Phil Esposito, Gretzky did it 4 times, Yari Curry, Lemieux did it twice, Bertie Nichols did it once, Brett Hull did it 3 times, but no such luck this go around for Matthews. And of course, Leafs fans holding their breath to see what the matchup with the Boston Bruins will be, and that happens, of course, Saturday night. Anyway, on this date in 1999, the last game in the NHL for the great one, Wayne Gretzky. The Rangers lost 2-1 to the Pittsburgh Penguins that night, the last time we saw the great one playing. And if you watch sports, and I know many of you do, and even if you don't, the prevalence of gambling has really gotten out of hand. I mean, the amount of money changing hands is one thing, but it's the so-called protection of the integrity of the game. So we've got NHLers, Major League Baseball players, NBA players, certainly in the NHL, some of the big marquee guys that are part of advertising the sports bets, whether it be Bet365 or whatever else is out there. And so when we talk about the integrity of the game, so in the NBA, they have banned Toronto Raptors' John Porter for life. Why? Because he was sharing information and manipulating some of what they call the prop bets, the propositions. So there was one game in particular where he was, the betting odds were that he would score, I think, 3 or 4 or 5 points, whatever the case may be. Early on in the game, he took himself out of the game. Lo and behold, there was all sorts of strange bets coming in on John Porter's props that night. One $80,000 bet got frozen and really raised some alarms. So he was involved in rigging the game. And out he goes for life, rightfully so. How are we going to make sure that, Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, says this is about protecting the integrity. So one guy gets caught. We saw an NHLer earlier in this season, spent half the season on the sidelines because of some betting concerns. But the pro leagues, they've set themselves up for disaster. Because full well John Porter is not the only professional athlete who was in on niggling around the edges and manipulating the books. So as much as there's going to see some giant revenues, at some point people are going to think it's fully rigged. And I don't think that's the case necessarily. Now, some sports easier to rig than others, but lifetime ban for a member of the Raptors. Well, I guess former member now. Quick baseball note, as we saw the Jays gag in the 9th inning last night to lose the Yankees. It was on this date 101 years ago. There's a new Yankee Stadium, but 101 years ago, Yankee Stadium opened the doors in the Bronx for the first time. John Philip Sousa was actually in there, in the building, talking about playing the Star-Spangled Banner. Babe Ruth hit a home run that day against the Boston Red Sox. They refer to that stadium as the house that Ruth built. There's only, I think, 4 stadiums that have seen more baseball games held than Yankee Stadium. So the Yankees hosted 6,581 regular season games at the Yankee Stadium. Only Fenway in Boston, Wrigley in Chicago, and Sportsman Park, as they used to call it, in St. Louis, and Tiger Stadium in Detroit have hosted more games. And of course, with the Yankees, repeat visitors to the playoffs, they hosted 161 postseason games in Yankee Stadium, most ever. And then, of course, some of the real famous events that have happened there. And one of the most famous is boxing match, June 22nd, 1938. Joe Louis took on a German, Max Schmeling. Pretty famous tilt. All right, let's keep going. Price of gas up 3.5 cents. Big drop, though, when we moved to the summer blend of diesel, down 8.5 cents. So it's at least once every single day I get an email asking me about the notorious 5 cents on gas. And people still think that 5 cents was there to come by chance of what they called a warm idle while they were looking for a new buyer. Eventually, Brea Renewable Fuels came to town. The reality is that 5 cents is not for that purpose. The government actually puts in excess of $16 million on the table to keep come by chance warm idle. The 5 cents goes to Silver Peak to subsidize their importation and distribution of fuels, because we, of course, are not doing any more refining of gas or dieseline at come by chance or Brea. They're doing the renewable diesel at this point. So that 5 cents, it comes up all the time. And fair enough. So price of gas up, price of diesel down. And we wonder what the status is of the government floating out the possibility, looking for suitors or investors who might be interested in taking on our equity stakes in the offshore oil fields. So this was a recommendation by Moya Green and her PERT crew. It was also a recommendation, we understand, from Rothschild and Co., even though we're not allowed to have a look at that particular report. Why? Who knows? They released the Moya Green report in full. We can't even sneak a peek at the Rothschild report. So the province says it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to sell them, but it'd be interesting to know what value they hold. Fair enough. Here's the update on the numbers as pertains to the equity stake. So the government has a 4.9% equity stake in Hebron, 8.7% equity position in the Hibernia South Extension, 5% at West White Rose. All right. What's also curious is that they're talking about potentially divesting the assets and the exploration teams and intellectual property at Oilco, which of course was splintered out from Nalcor. At the same time, while they're floating out these assets to see what they might be worth and possibly open some negotiations, they're still talking about potentially having an equity stake in Bay du Nord if and when that finally gets going. So which is it? Divest and or continue to think that an equity stake is a wise position? Anyway, if you want to talk about it, we can do it. The concern coming from the Tories would be that when we are looking down the road at potential offshore development, they think when we're talking about divesting from some of these projects that it might mean the government is all out. Well, of course, the government doesn't seem to be all out on oil at all, much to some people's chagrin. For folks who are watching the industry, hoping that it continues and hoping that Bay du Nord might not be the last, but it very well might be if you want to take it on. We can do it. One more in the oil industry. So we are all in as taxpayers on the Trans Mountain Pipeline. Of course, that's a twinning of an existing pipeline. And of course, it is going to be a huge boost to oil producers. What it does mean for the country, though, is that as opposed to getting a discount price that the Americans pay us, we will indeed be back on the world pricing scheme. So there will be more money on that side. Good for the companies, great for the companies, not bad for the government revenue side. But, I mean, when the government bought that pipeline in 2018 from Kinder Morgan, the price tag was $4.5 billion. Now it's well in excess of $30 billion. And the Trans Mountain Corporation, and quietly the government said, no more government money going into the pipeline, but they went ahead and did loan guarantees up to the tune of a couple of $1 billion in the recent past. The ultimate irony here is that the industry thought it wouldn't start flowing oil until the 1st of June, but lo and behold, it's going to happen on the 1st of May. They continue to say that it's commercially viable. I mean, how can that possibly be? You know, we are all in as taxpayers to pay for that bloody pipeline. Yes, good for the industry. Yes, maybe good for the bottom line. We don't know, nobody knows what peak oil means, when it will happen, what the future looks like for the industry. But we're all in on that pipeline, and that's the 1st of May it'll start to flow, and we'll see. The federal government continues to say they're looking for potential investors and or an entity willing to take it on in full. At what price tag? There's no chance that the industry is interested in buying a $30+ billion pipeline at this moment. But anyway, just some more oil-related matters. All right, yesterday we got an update from the provincial government on daycare. Okay, so what we really don't know in full is exactly what the net gain has been inside the world of daycare. Yes, more funding for daycare operators and the operating grant, bringing the total for an infant, which is extremely hard to find a spot for an infant in daycare. The total cost coverage by the province now will reach $101. Okay. The problem is that if you ask families out there who are now currently pregnant or have an infant and or a toddler, it is extremely difficult to get a daycare space. So they say, the government, there's 2,206 early childhood learning and childcare spaces in development with various timelines to opening. According to a release, over 1,500 $10 a day spaces have been created since January 2023. What's the net gain? What is actually the net gain here? Because we can look down the road and we know full well that early childhood education has an appreciable impact on the academic success for children. So we got to get it right. On top of that, people who even are talking about possibly opening up a facility and or their home to be a regulated childcare space, there's still concerns with how and when they get paid through the operating grant program. So, okay, apparently we're making some strides, but you remember a recent report coming from the Federation of Labour saying some 42% of early childhood educators are considering leaving the field. Why? Not only work conditions and rate of pay, but the lack of benefits. The government says they are indeed looking at the possibility to include pensions and benefits for early childhood educators. So we'll keep an eye on that because that's a pretty important issue. I don't need it. My kids are in their 20s, but I do think it's well understood the overall impact upside of making sure that that works properly. And yesterday in the House of Assembly, and rightfully so, questions being asked about where the government is and the stories we've heard from the NLTA about violence in schools. 29 reports of violence per day. Now, yes, some of the definition of violence may extend beyond what you think in your mind's eye would be violence. That would be, outlashes with actual physical violence, as opposed to what might be deemed in some corners as a violent act through words. If someone says, I'm going to kill you, that is a violent act. But if it's something more innocuous in the form of taunting and teasing, it's certainly unfortunate and unnecessary, but I don't know if it meets the threshold of violence. The government talks about they've created now a school violence prevention task force or committee, whatever label they've attached to it. Okay, good. And then we look at all the other task force and committees that have been struck in the Education Accord and the Health Accord, and there is a pretty extensive list. This conversation is bigger than the government, though. It's easy enough and fair ball if people want to blame politicians for all of our ills and woes. But when we talk about violence in schools, it really is the larger community. And I don't know how we're going to wrap our minds around this. The air of accountability that has been sapped from the education system, and in large part sapped from societal concerns. Not talking about bringing back the razor strap and, you got your earlobes pinched off and you're stuffed in the corner or you walk the rows. No, not those things at all. But we really have found ourselves in a spot, whether it be about the amount of violence, the lack of accountability, the societal and the cultural shift that has led to many of these problems. It's going to be incumbent not only on teachers and administrators and task force, it's going to be largely responsible in the hands of the parents. It just is. I mean, not every child might be as perfect as some of our parents think they might be. And we've got to figure out a way to move the pendulum a little bit back to where it once was. Again, back to the bad old days. But if Johnny or Jane is misbehaving, or Johnny and Jane is on the receiving end and consequently doesn't want to go to school, isn't that something that we should all wrap our minds around and be concerned with? You've heard the stories. With the chronic absenteeism and the decline in scores and the number of children who are unwilling to participate, don't care about getting their work done, the lack of accountability, the whole cultural shift, the whole cultural paradigm that's brought us to this point. So it's fine to want to blame Crystal and Howell when I think that maybe is misguided, personally. The school community has to come together and figure this out. And it really will fall back on the parents. It will. For better or worse. I mean, learned behavior can indeed happen in the schoolyard or down by Rennie's River at the Rock at 3 o'clock, but it does begin, and many forms end inside the home. So it's being talked about in the House of Assembly, and please do, if you're politicians. We can go back and forth on carbon taxes and cost of living, and we should and will include all of these big conversations. But we are betraying ourselves if we don't have more discussions publicly, societally, in the House of Assembly and everywhere else, around the water coolers, about how to get it done better when we talk about the K-12 system. On that similar front, the story coming from Central about the backlog that pediatricians are talking about with the youth trying to access whether it be diagnosis or help with mental health issues. These are all contributing to the same outcomes. So one doctor has written a letter saying there's a heavy backlog. They're looking for treating such things as ADHD, learning disabilities, oppositional defiant disorder, disruptive disorder, anxiety, depression, and autism. And as a result, the doctor has asked for no more requests to be sent along. you know what the end result will be of this. If we have children that are undiagnosed and not getting the treatment, what do you think that's going to mean for attendance in school? What do you think that's going to mean for disruption in school? What do you think that's going to mean for academic achievement for not only that child, but everyone else in their class? So the government says they're looking at it, they're aware of the letter, but a heavy backlog, so says the doctor, for children looking for some help with their mental well-being and their mental health. Anyway, amazing stuff. All right, how are we doing out there, Dave? There's a few I want to get to here. So we know that the deadline to file your taxes is coming up on the 30th of April, and a couple of unfortunate stories and maddening stories coming out of CRA. So there are a bunch of different groups that have been deemed to be scammers, and as a result, it's been disclosed now, even though one of the accounting firms, KPMG, fought for about 10 months to keep this story out of the news because it would be to the potential detriment to one of their clients, and that client would be Goal Line Telemanagement. So the courts have said they made material misstatements and part of a group of companies that participated in sham transactions. The amount of money that went out the door in the form of sales tax refunds to that group was $37 million. There are other claims out there that have been deemed illegitimate to the tune of over $100 million. Right? Then you add to some of the things that we really do, I think, were necessary, but when we look at how they were handled, like the CERB and the wage subsidy, just for a reminder, and this came from the Auditor General of Canada in December of 2022. At that point, about $210 billion had been paid out in benefits during the pandemic. But here's the problem. $4.6 billion went to individuals, and an estimated $27.4 billion in payments to individuals and employers should be investigated further. Where does that land? We don't know, but we have found out recently is some 120 CRA employees got fired. Why? Because they claimed CERB. Right? We're talking about drawing back or clawing back money from people who received the CERB, and in some cases that's probably a good thing, but in others we're just making bad situations worse. What we haven't done is given any attention to corporate Canada, who completely abused the wage subsidy. Again, I use this example because I think it's really reflective of the attitude that some of these big groups have. You know, the Royal Ottawa Golf Club, at their AGM one year, they said, well, we have $1 million surplus. And the question was asked from the floor, why is that? Oh, the wage subsidy. The wage subsidy wasn't for your profitability. It was to keep people on the payroll. But CRA paying out all that money in the form of sham transactions, great. You know, and on that front. So, amazingly, there's been a keen focus in the country about the increase in capital gains. So moving from 50% to 2/3 on transactions, you know, selling stocks and other assets, secondary homes, what have you, to the tune of $250,000 plus. I mean, it affects, about 0.13% of Canadians, possibly. But here's just a reminder. You know, Bill Morneau, former finance minister, he's calling out the budget, and of course he has an axe to grind too, but he's talking about productivity investment in the country. In the 1980s, Brian Mulroney was the prime minister, and they hiked the capital gains inclusion rate from 50% to 75%. That sounds familiar. Overall combined corporate tax rate was in the low 40s versus the current rate of 26.5. What happened? Investment continued and growth continued. Now, the economy is treading water, no doubt about it. But I think some of the hyperventilating by some of the rich is a bit much. Secondly, when we talk about the amount of revenue lost, whether it be scams that are paid out by CRA and otherwise, you've seen like the Panama Papers, what have you, the number of the muckety-mucks that are putting their money offshore in these tax havens as opposed to paying their tax bill to the country, if we could get that right, we would really reduce our worries when it comes to taxation and capital gains increases and all the rest of it. So if you want to take it on, we can do it. Read a story from Stats Canada. I guess I'll leave that for tomorrow because it's talking about the further divide, the worst in history, between the rich and the poor. Income, wealth distribution, what the net rise in income last year looked like for the rich versus the poor. I'll get to that tomorrow because there's a lot inside of those stories to talk about. Last one on the fishery. So the ASP and the FFAW are really thinking that they're on the right track, but the formula is now created for crab, lobster, and halibut. But boy, oh boy, the amount of concern, frustration, and anger that remains inside the world of the fish harvesters is real. Are they all on the water now? Are all the pots on board, in the water, going after the crab? Because when the two representative associations think they're on the right track and the harvesters don't, I don't know how they're going to mend that broken fence. But if you want to take on issues like that or anything else under the sun, you know the deal. The topics are entirely up to you. We're on Twitter. Oh, successful volunteer fair at the St. John's Farmers Market. Happy Volunteer Week to you, if you are indeed a volunteer. If you'd like to highlight a volunteer in your world or in your organization, we can do that on the show. Volunteers make the world go round. People save money. I think volunteers could be included in that conversation. We are on Twitter. We're VOCM Openline. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a great show. We're going to talk about the food fishery and the National Dental Program and whatever's on your mind. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Eric. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Paddy. How are you doing?
I'm grand this morning, thanks. How about you?
Well, I got a lot of pain in my teeth and everything, right? Just wondering how I go about calling, who do I call now to get that free for old age pensioners? I'm 72. To get the free dental.
Well, you just go directly to your own dentist.
Okay, do I have to bring anything about something from the doctor? Or?
Well, I mean, I'm not entirely sure what your ailment is, but if it's simply, to have a tooth extracted or work done, it's simply just going to a dentist. Now, interestingly, for folks who maybe haven't heard this update, because it's been confusing about who gets covered and all the rest, dental associations have said that some of the requirements that was a barrier for dentists or denturists or hygienists, some of that's been waived. So apparently now dentists can bill the federal government directly without even signing up for the program. How that works, I don't know. But when these big policies are announced, with the lack of detail, of course, people like yourself are confused. I'm confused. Dentists are confused. But the overall advice that I'll give you this morning is, if you want to avail of the National Dental Program, just go directly to your own dentist and make an appointment. Now, none of the coverage is going to begin until May, so you still got a bit of time before they actually will cover. And I don't think there's a word of retro, but it's simply a matter of just going to the dentist, Eric.
Yeah, well, I don't understand it either, Betty. That's why I called you, to find out some information about it. So you don't understand it either.
Oh, I understand it enough to know, how it works and how the billing works. Now in July, the dentists are going to be able to bill Sun Life directly, even if they're not enrolled in the plan formally, which I think is a good thing, because there's some 30,000 plus dentists in the country. Only a few thousand had signed up. Why? Because they didn't want to do all the paperwork, right? And they had concerns with what was covered. So ultimately, what I can tell you is, you don't have to go through the federal government, you don't have to go through the provincial government, you don't have to jump through any hoops, you simply have to go to your own dentist.
Well, I usually go over to the dentist over in the village mall, right?
Okay.
Because I live in Kilbride and I can't get around too much. I have no car or anything. I have to get the bus back and forth. So I just, like I said, I'm trying to find out some information about it, how I go about it. I called my doctor, Dr. Chalk. He's going to call me and give me a call back, right? Next Tuesday. But my God, Paddy, I'm after having a lot of pain and a lot of my teeth are gone anyway.
Do you use a computer by chance, Eric?
No, listen, Paddy, I'm a dinosaur.
Okay, I was just curious. The dentist should be able to help walk you through it. That's why I suggest you just call them directly. There is a way to get an application so you can get your own personalized code, which is part of it. I should go back and make sure I get this right for you and for everyone else listening.
Okay, thank you very much, Paddy.
I can probably give you a phone number if you'd like to try to access it on the telephone. And what I'm going to have to do is call you back with a specific number, because I don't have it right in front of me and I don't think I can find it. You also had to have filed your taxes. Have you got your taxes filed?
Oh, yes, I have, yeah.
Okay, so that's important. So, yeah, you have to have a net income of less than $90,000, of course.
Oh, my God.
You can't have access to dental insurance privately held. So, yes, you do have to go through the government to get your personalised number. I forgot that. You do have to get an ID number. So maybe the dentist in the village mall can help walk you through the process if you don't have a computer and you're not familiar with how to go through the next stages. So call them. If you don't have any luck, you get back to me and I'll help you out.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I understand that.
Okay.
But I worked in construction all my life. Well, I've never made 40,000. How much did you say?
It's net family income of $90,000 or less. If you make $70,000 or less, then there'd be no copay. So let's see if the dentist will help you out to try to get a personalized ID number. If not, we'll try to help you out. Okay?
Well, like I said, I'm 72 years old, and I never made that in my life.
Okay.
That kind of money.
Then you're going to be eligible because the portal for your age group opened up in February, so you are technically eligible for the coverage, which does not start till May. But you see if the dentist can walk you through getting a personalised ID number for the claim, and if not, we'll find someone who can.
Okay, Fanny. Listen, Fanny.
Well,
God love you, and I listen to you every morning when I get up. You're a really good person to help people out.
Well,
especially old age pensioners.
Well, I'm glad you enjoy the program. I appreciate your call, and let me know if you have any luck with your dentist.
Okay, thank you very much, Penny.
You're welcome. Good luck.
You have a good morning, eh?
The very same to you, Eric.
All right.
Take care.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Yeah, my mind got off to a bad start there. There is eligibility criteria that you need to check, but it's pretty broad strokes. You know, there was a staggered opening for different age groups. They started with, people 85 and older or something, which was kind of a strange place to start. But now, by the time 2025 rolls around, anyone who's technically eligible, of which there's still plenty of confusion surrounding that eligibility criteria. Remember at the beginning, they were saying if you have private health insurance and one of the add-ons that was available was dental, but you did not check that box and consequently were not paying for or had access to private dental insurance simply because it was available inside your policy, then you were technically ineligible for this program, which makes absolutely no sense. So again, pharmacare, dental care, all conceptually good ideas to help people who cannot afford to get that type of help, whether it be with their drugs. And of course, the pharmacare plan rolled out with the contraceptives and diabetes medication. And in the world of dental care, they say it'll be able to help some 9 million Canadians, but between dentists, hygienists, denturists, Canadians, people are still a bit confused, like Eric is, and I've remained a little bit confused on this one as well. So there is eligibility criteria, but it's pretty broad, and it does include access to health insurance, it does include your age, it does include net family income. So anyway, hopefully Eric is going to be able to get his dentist to help walk him through it to get that personalised code for billing purposes. Let's take a break. When we come back to recreational food fishery, don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number one. Good morning, Barry. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure. Thanks for calling.
Hey, talk about the food fishery here this morning and how there's still not a decision been made yet, and that's not a big surprise, I guess. We know about the petition that Graham Wood had circulated, and Clifford Small, the MP, Conservative MP, had put into the House of the Commons. Still haven't heard anything about it. I think the petition may have been a little too ambitious for the amount of time that's being asked for, and I'm not sure what's going to happen. I know the best system that we had, Patty, was a few years ago, I think around 2015, 2016, thereabouts, where we had the 3 weeks in the summer, 2 weeks in August, July, and a week in August, and the last week in September. And then MP Judy Foote announced on the wharf in Argentia, I believe, about the opening the recreational fishery, the food fishery, for the weekends in July and August, and that, for the most part, made most everybody happy. You're not going to make everybody happy, but most people was happy. However, a couple of years later, or a year later, that the 3 weeks in the summertime was eliminated because of the quota cut that the commercial fishers took themselves, which is understandable. However, now the commercial fisheries has been listed coming out of the red and getting a little more popular with the commercial quotas increasing. I think the best system for the food fishery will be to have the weekends in the summer, but give us back the 3 weeks in the summer, 2 weeks in July, or 2 weeks in July and 1 week in August, and that silly weekend in September, take that and put that in the weekends in September.
Yeah, so, I mean, last year, and it's quite likely, I don't know, I don't have a crystal ball, but it's quite likely it's going to be just like it was last year, 39 days beginning on the 1st of July. And you're right, so went on the weekends of July the 1st, then we had to wait, so let's see here, July the 1st and the 8th, all those weekends right up to the 26th of August, and then you're right, that come back in the fall for the one weekend, which was, I think, September the 2nd, if I remember correctly. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I'll be surprised if there's any change. But what I'd also like to see this year is a bit more clarity on boat limits. And this is you brought this up, and you shared an email from DFO about this issue. They keep saying the same thing. 5 per person, 15 per boat. But then they're also saying in the same breath that if there's 5 in a vessel that can accommodate 5 people safely, they can all bring 5 in. No one's going to be charged or no fines will be levied. So which is it? They really should be a bit more clear on that one.
Agreed, Paddy. Agreed. And it seems that DFL's unwillingness to just make a correction for the public, because in one breath, DFL regulation saying that's maximum 15 for the boat. In another breath, they're saying in a private email letter that I had and you have as well, that it's 5 fish per person. Why cannot they just say in black and white, here's what it is? It's 5 fish per person. There is no boat limit.
Fair enough. I mean, clarity is always important, right? And the problem will always be, and this is not rampant necessarily, but people who willfully abuse the system. And what I mean by that, and I unfortunately have a buddy of mine who does exactly this. When the weather is good enough to be on the water and Saturday morning rolls around, they'll get up, and at dawn, they'll hit the water and they'll come in and out as much as they can throughout the course of the day. So yes, they won't be breaking the boat limit per trip, but the concept is that they're just going to take far too many fish for what they should rightfully have access to, given the rules. And I'm not talking about people's God-given right to be able to go out and get a feed of fish, but there's still a lot of silliness that goes on inside the food fishery, the recreational food fishery.
Yes, indeed, Paddy. Yes, indeed. And one of my suggestions to DFO about the policing, if you want, is that right now there is not that much policing, and I think it could be solved very easily by having a DFO enforcement vehicle with a DFO enforcement officer or officers in that vehicle parked on the wharf. Spend so much time on one wharf, go to the next wharf, go to the next wharf in your geographical region, such that then people don't know when you're going to show up, and will keep most people on the straight and narrow. Now, I'm not saying that all people are poachers, but there are poachers out there, and there are people saying there are poachers out there. But the minute I speak up about something like this, I was accused of bringing more rules and regulations.
Yeah, people are kind of sick of the overreach of government and the endless rules and regulations. But for some, I mean, the reason why there's these types of rules and regulations in place is because there's so many or too many people who are willing to abuse the system, period. Whether it be with out and out poaching, or whether it be simply, steaming in and out of the bay all day long, every weekend that the fishery is open, and forget 15 per day, they might indeed have 60 per day. Why? Because they didn't break the trip limit rule, but they went out enough to bring in 60 in the run of a day. It's just a bit much, right? Same thing when we talk about bag limit for seabirds and whatnot. So 40 a day. And what do we see at the end of the season? How many people are throwing away freezer burnt turs, come around the next hunting season? So it's all very much the same concept. Anything else you want to add this morning, Barry?
Paddy, just talking about the fishery a little more.
Sure.
You have the boat limit, you have the weather, you have everything else, and that falls at the feet of the owner or operator of the watercraft to make that qualified judgment that makes it safe for you and your crew to go out in the summertime to participate in the food fishery.
Yeah, and I'll add one more to it. I think Transport Canada, it's about time they figure out that the way they approach flotation devices, life jackets, it's one thing to need to have one flotation device or one life jacket per person on the boat, but you don't make them wear it. It just makes no sense. People use it as a seat cushion.
Paddy, you know my position on it, and I've been talking about and lobbying for life jacket mandatory use for years and years, and we may see a bit of a push for it again. Now it's going to depend on this other group that I'm with, which is a national group. But you're right. There's all kinds of sayings about life jackets, but one saying holds very, very true. If the life jacket is out of reach and you don't have your life jacket on, it may be out of reach if you need it.
100%. Barry, I'm off to the next call, but I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Paddy. As always, it's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. Take care. Bye-bye. All right, let's keep rolling here. Let's go to line number 3. Jesse, you're on the air.
How's Paddy on his Mazzy all morning?
Hanging tough. How about you?
A little bit tired, but I got back last night for setting out a few pots and stuff, a couple long days, but, taking it easy.
At least you're on the water.
Yes, that's what I say too, buddy. At least we're on the water.
Fair enough.
But that's not what I called for now. I called because I heard you talking about you did a serve and that this morning, see? So, when I was working, I got laid off just before the serve started. Actually, I was set up to one of the rooms for the isolation rooms in the health science centre for the COVID patients. But we got laid off, and before the serve started, I was getting $575 a week unemployment. When the serve started, I got dropped back to $500 a week to $2,000, right? So as it went on, I got a few days' work, or a couple days' work here and there, and I missed a day. When I filed my unemployment, 3 times they sent me $500 through CERB for missing one day's work. So now, through the jigs and reels now, I got a letter coming in the mail there, like whenever they start sending out the letters, that I owe them $1,500 for them 3 checks that they give me for missing one day, the $500 they give me for missing one day, right? But the thing is, like I said, I was getting $575 a week before that. So when the whole time CERB was on the go, I was losing $75 a week, right?
You're not alone. People were automatically pushed into CERB regardless. If you were dealing with Service Canada or dealing with CRA, the fact of the matter is, even if you had still active EI claim, so many people, and sometimes unbeknownst to them, ended up on the CERB.
Yep. I called out there. I said, well, what about the $75 that you took out of me? Like, so why should I, they're the ones who sent me the $500. Now, it was my fault for spending it. Don't get me wrong. Right? I shouldn't have spent it for one day. If one day you missed work one day and they give you $500 and you know it was wrong, but still, back then, I don't bless with money, right? You know what I mean? So you know you're going to use it, right? But now, my point is, what about the $75 a week that I lost through the whole works with?
Yeah, they're not going to do anything about that, unfortunately.
No, they're not, right?
No, and of course, how many people got themselves in a problem with taxes when CERB was taxable income? How many people actually set aside money to pay their eventual tax bill? I would imagine a lot of people found themselves in a pickle. And then even if you were deemed to be ineligible, and the government, as of mid last year, they had recovered somewhere around $250 million. And what they did is through what they called offsetting. So that if you owed money to CRA because of CERB and you were due a tax refund this year, they were going to take the money to pay off your debt.
Yep. Well, that's what me. I always thought it was a bit of taxes anyways, because like I said, I was a seasonal worker, and your unemployment takes it. You don't get much taxes taken out of unemployment. You always get dinged on it, right? But I just think this is fairly unfair about it. Is that like I said, I lost, not just me, a lot of people lost money, and because they got an extra few checks because they just passed them out left, right, and centre, they got to pay back to. It's just. Yeah.
Now some people should have known better. Some people, like for instance, self-employed. They didn't know, and they weren't told clearly at the beginning when CERB became available that they were technically ineligible. Consequently, they ended up paying back huge money. There were stories out there, people who were approved for the federal disability tax credit, and all of a sudden they were given CERB payments that they didn't even ask for, and consequently, they had bills to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars owing to CRA. So as much as people needed some initial help, businesses and individuals, and they did it very quickly, but they didn't include all the required oversight and monitoring to ensure that eligibility requirements were hit. I mean, even in CERB alone, the Auditor General said that $4.6 billion was sent to individuals who were not eligible for it, period. But yet for folks who knew they were doing the wrong thing, too bad about you. For folks who inadvertently got bumped into it like you did, for people that got it and didn't even ask for it, then there's got to be a way for CRA and Service Canada and the federal government to take a bit more responsibility for that. If someone willfully did it, then fair enough, including the 120 employees at CRA themselves that applied for the CERB, even though they were working on evaluating and distributing the CERB money. I mean, disgraceful stuff.
It is, but it's ridiculous, right? Yeah. Well, I don't know. You think they'd have something set up that, like, for people like who lost money, you think they'd have something set up that you were on unemployment anyways. You would have got it if they never put the CERB in. You should be able to take that bit of money that they took from you in the first place and use that to pay down your loan, right?
Yeah, maybe. That's one of the.
Not the loan, the bill. Yeah.
That's one of the groups of people in the country that if I was on social assistance and the CERB was for folks who had their hours of work impacted or lost their job or were laid off. That's what CERB was for. So if you were on social assistance and you weren't working, then most of those people know full well they weren't eligible, but many of them went ahead and applied. The issue then is clawing it back. To set up the bureaucracy required for clawing back the money, I'm going to guess, if we simply talk about people on social assistance, I'm going to guess that by the time all the money is clawed back, which is at very small increments, by the time that's done, it probably costs government money. They're not up money at all. It's pound of flesh kind of stuff and making bad situations worse. So, not every case is the same. I appreciate your call this morning, Jesse. I got to get to the break, but anything else you want to say quickly?
Yes, Leafs or Boston. Which one's going to win?
Boy, if I was a betting man, I think the Bruins. I mean, the Leafs have a pretty solid team, but I think on the back end and in the net, the Bruins have the advantage. Yeah,
I bet you coffee and a donut. The Leafs takes it in 6.
Okay, fair ball. You're on.
All right, buddy.
Thanks.
Have a good day.
You too, Jesse. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, let's go ahead and take a break. When we come back, plenty of time for you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Well, coming up on April 23rd to the 28th is the 35th playing of the Don Johnson Memorial Cup. Joining us on the line is the chair of the Don Johnson Memorial Cup for this year. That's Wally O'Neill. Good morning, Wally. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. Thanks for taking my call. Paddy, I want to take an opportunity this morning to tell all your listeners about some exciting junior hockey to be played in Mount Pearl next week. And as you said, the 2024 Don Johnson Memorial Cup, and that will be hosted at the Glacier from April 23rd to the 28th. And this will feature the best junior B hockey teams from across Atlantic Canada. So I think we're in for some really exciting hockey. The 2 Newfoundland teams will be, representing the St. John's Junior Hockey League. And that will be our host team, the Mount Pearl Junior Blades, and we actually were the President Cup, first place overall regular season, league winners. But again, the curse of the President's Trophy. We lost out to in the semis to the CBN Stars. And, of course, the eventual league winners were the St. John's Junior Caps to win the Taylor Cup as the 2024 league champions. As you know, the Caps organization have had a great, spring with both championships in junior and senior.
Yeah.
We'll also be bringing in 3 teams from across Atlantic Canada, and these teams are going to be very strong as well. The Antigonish Bulldogs from Nova Scotia just won their league championship last night in double overtime, and they're actually 3 times winners of that league. The Kent Coyotes from New Brunswick are actually 2-time winners, and also the Kensington Vipers from PEI. So, there's going to be some really great hockey played there. I know one game on my highlight for me is the next Thursday at noon is going to be a rematch of last year's championship game.
The Don Johnson, absolutely fabulous event. My brother Michael, as a member of the Celtics, won the Don Johnson there a number of years ago. So, did you say that the Nova Scotia entrant has been settled yet?
The Nova Scotia entrant was settled last night in double overtime, Paddy, in Bridgewater, Nova Scotia, in front of 2,100 fans. So, I mean, the support for, junior hockey in those small, communities and across Atlantic Canada is really strong, and actually, obviously, with the exit of our, beloved Growlers, I guess we're all hoping in both junior and senior that people will start to gravitate more to some of the fantastic local hockey. And you know that, Paddy, yourself, that's been around for a while.
The St. John's Junior Hockey League is an amazing success story. So Junior A, I think that's what we call this level of hockey these days. I mean, so many of the Junior A leagues around the country are super strong. Why? Because a lot of hockey players don't want to jeopardize their NCAA eligibility. So whether it be Saskatchewan, Alberta, and BC in particular, have wicked strong Junior A leagues. Wally, did you happen to know Don Johnson?
I've met him on several occasions. He was a great man. I mean, one for a story, and certainly one to shed a tear as well, Paddy, as you know. So, he was a fantastic, advocate for junior hockey. He was originally born in Halifax, but he basically, moved to Newfoundland with his career, and we've always claimed him as a Newfoundlander.
Absolutely. He was the president of the NAHA, as it was called at the time, that brought us into the fold of Canadian Amateur Hockey Association, of which he then became the president. Don had a lot of work, to preserve the Western Junior Hockey League as part of the CHL. So his reach and his influence on the game is immeasurable. And he was a lovely man. Just a couple of quick stories. So I was a member of the Athlete of the Month committee with Don and a bunch of the other sports people in town. And when he'd get up to present the award, before he acknowledged the winner, he would always thank the other competitors, those who finished second, because you couldn't finish first unless you had someone to play against. So he was just so thoughtful. And you mentioned double overtime. Don Johnson himself is responsible for a change in the Canadian hockey rulebook, because people refer to the overtime winner as sudden death, right? It's a sudden death victory. Don changed the wording formally. It's now sudden victory. People don't say it, but that's the actual technical definition of the winning goal in overtime. We call it sudden death. Don called it sudden victory, because it was all about the winner. It wasn't about the defeat and the crushing blow that is losing in overtime, which I did twice in Game 7 as a junior player myself. So Don's influence, not only in hockey, but in softball. I mean, he's in both Hall of Fames. He was a gem of a man. I just wanted to get that out there.
Absolutely, and all very good comments for sure, Paddy.
Wally, there's a lot of work goes on behind the scenes. It's not just drop the puck and off go the hockey games. So have anything to say about the numbers of people it takes and some of the people you'd like to thank to get this going? Because the chair holds a lot of responsibility, but there's a big team behind it.
Absolutely. I mean, between our event team and our volunteers and our, host committee, we've got about 65 people, scheduled to put off this event. So, I mean, it takes a village. It really does. We've been at it for 16 months now, and, we're really looking forward to a good turnout and, an exciting week of junior hockey for sure. And, of course, our honorary chair is Mr. Kevin Dix, who is a longtime volunteer with junior hockey. He's also a member of the Mount Pearl Sport Alliance Hall of Fame, and he was the host, chair when we hosted this in 2003, the Mount Pearl Junior Blades.
I did some hockey work with Kevin as well. Couldn't pick a better guy. He's done a lot for the sport behind the scenes. That's for sure. Wally, congratulations and to your entire team. For folks who are interested, get out to Mount Pearl. The Glacier is a great building to watch a bit of junior hockey in. The tournament schedule will run from the 23rd of April to the 28th. Who's in the opening ceremony game? The Caps, I assume?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, as you said, the tournament starts on Tuesday night at 7:30 as the two Newfoundland teams face off, and that's going to be the Caps and the Blades. And then over the week, we have games at 12, 3:30, and 7:30 leading into the weekend. Paddy, it's going to be 13 games overall. Tickets are $10 for an adult, $5 for a child under 12. And, of course, we have tournament passes for all 13 games for an adult or child for $65. So a very cheap night out. They're going to go on pre-sale at the Glacier box office this coming Sunday from 2 to 5 and Monday from 4 to 7. And you can also stream the game on AO Live, and that link will be on the St. John's Junior Hockey League website.
Enjoy the event. Congratulations to you and your team. And I'll recommend going out and catching some of this junior hockey. There will be, these players are playing for keeps, and hopefully both teams representing the province, Mount Pearl, the Mount Pearl Blades, and the St. John's Junior Caps advance into the semis, because they only drop one team, and then 4 teams move off to the semi-finals. So let's get to at least that stage, and hopefully one of those 2 teams can bring home the big prize, which is the Don Johnson Memorial Cup. Appreciate the time, Wally.
Thank you for your time, Paddy.
My pleasure. Bye-bye. Take care. Bye-bye. It's Wally O'Neill. He's the chair of the Don Johnson Cup. Let's go. Dave wants me to go to line number 1, is it? Okay, line number 1 it is. Dennis, you're on the air.
Yes, Paddy. I'm just calling about the coyotes on the island.
Go ahead.
And I sent you an email. I don't know if you got it or not.
I've seen it, but there's a ton there that I haven't been able to read quite yet this morning, but I did see your name, Dennis. I won't say your last name, but I saw the subject line was coyotes.
Yeah. Anyway, just talking about the coyote population affected the sheep producers to reduce their flocks and get out of it altogether. Traditionally, they have grazed on the cliffs, and which were free range, some pasture lands, and the coyotes have devastated it, basically. Now the farmers are just keeping small flocks home, fenced in, and there's a big loss of income for these farmers. And it's also affected the moose population in the caribou across the island, which affects the amount of money spent on moose trips across the island, which affects our economy. I'm sure the outfitters are affected also. And right now the bounty is $25 per coyote, which doesn't seem viable for people to hunt them because, I mean, you know, the price of gas and skidoos in the winter and stuff like that. So I think it should be a minimum of 100, but I could be wrong. Maybe some hunters would know better. But I think there should be a committee put together with affected government departments, farmers, hunters, and outfitters to come up with a plan. I know their committees a lot of times have been a farce and stuff in the past, but I mean, it can't hurt. And I think if we had enough bounty on them, we're an island, and we were able to hunt them year round and allowed access to the parks certain times of the year and stuff like that, we could eradicate the coyote from the island, which they are an invasive species.
Yeah, they're not native to the province. They do repopulate very, very quickly. So
yes.
It doesn't look like the bounty or the amount of money that the government will pay at $25 doesn't look like that's going to really do much, because I've heard from many folks out there who would be willing to go out and take some of the coyotes out of the population, whether it be to spare caribou or farm animals or whatever the case may be. I've heard numbers floated that people think are appropriate, more in the tune of $200, they think, when you try to incorporate the time, the effort, the gas, and whatever the case may be. But I wonder how many more people would be out there going after the coyotes, even if it was $200. I know that's an exercise in futility,
I think it'd be a lot more, because we have a lot of workers that do the shift work, like 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off, and a lot of them are hunters too, like and they do that when on their time off and stuff like that. And seasonal workers like fishermen and stuff like that, they hunt in the winter if it was viable and stuff like that.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's an obvious problem, and it's only getting worse, because if people aren't willing to go after them, and the fact that they do repopulate very, very quickly, apparently some parts of the province are absolutely overrun. I mean, it's not uncommon to see them right in the middle of urban residential settings.
I know. I was up shore last weekend, and I think they're going to affect there's a lot of geese nesting up St. Shots and Peters River Barns and Portugal Cove South area, and you can see the pairs everywhere. So, I mean, what kind of a chance have they got when they're nesting, and if they have young, the young can't fly, so, I mean, the coyotes could clean them up too.
Quite possibly, yep.
Yeah, like, I mean, any four-legged animal could run them down, but, I mean, with the coyotes running rampant up there, like, I mean, there was a black coyote spotted in Long Beach last week, so, I mean, you know, that was probably mixed with a dog or something.
Could very well be, and we've had those, I don't know, hybrids, but people thought, is that a wolf or what is that? And apparently we've got some of those hybrids and more wolves have been spotted in the province. And of course, it's one thing to float across on the ice, and of course Labrador is part of the mainland. There was always the thought was, there's no wolves in Newfoundland, but I don't know how accurate that is either.
By the way, I'm still not of the belief that the coyotes came in on the ice, but I think they were brought in for pulp and paper industry, because the moose were eating all the young saplings. And but that's just my opinion now.
Yeah, and you could be right. I have no earthly idea, but I appreciate the time and the topic. Final thoughts to you, Dennis. Go ahead.
And the government websites, people say that the government says they were brought in like they came in on the ice. But if you read the wording, the government didn't say that they came in on the ice. They just thought there was a chance they could have come in on the ice along that line.
but you just got to read the wording of it. And but anyway, that's it. And I hope people out there are willing to have more say on this. And thanks for your time.
They're welcome to call. I appreciate your time, Dennis. Stay in touch.
Thanks, bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, let's take a break for the news. Lots of time for you right after this. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number one, Sigmore, to the Executive Director at Trades NL. That's Darren King. Darren, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you?
Doing okay. How about you?
I'm doing well, thanks. I appreciate the opportunity to have a chat.
Happy to have you on. So, inside the world of skilled trades, there's probably a lot to sink your teeth into regarding the federal budget, including some $8.9 billion more money for building homes. The trick then becomes, is how quickly can the homes be built, and who's actually going to build them? Because the country says there's a shortage of skilled labour, and if you look at the need to build homes in this province on top of everything else that could come to pass, possibly in the very near future, do we have a problem?
Yeah, I definitely think we have a problem, Paddy, and I'm sure you recall I've talked to you about this a couple of times for sure over the last 12 or 14 months. What we're facing is a real challenge around labour supply. So if you back up a tiny bit to pre-budget, Buildforce Canada released a report several weeks ago, and they're reporting a net opening of about 2,400 trades jobs in Newfoundland and Labrador over the next 10 years. And that does not factor in wind hydrogen projects or any other resource development project that we're not aware of at this point coming on stream, nor does it factor in any unannounced provincial infrastructure. So none of that was factored in there, and we're showing a net loss of 2,400 trade jobs. Now you add in the announcement of the federal government on the housing, which, by the way, I think is a good announcement, and I think there's some good things there around apprenticeship services and support for small and medium enterprises and trades advocacy. But you factor in those number of homes to be built, the question does become, like, where are we going to get the trades workers? I mean, today, I can find trades workers today. We're in one of those lulls where we're winding down in Argentia from where we were a year ago, and there's not a lot of significant work on the horizon. So we've got a lot of people traveling outside the province that I'm sure will come home if there's some opportunity for long-term employment. But it does not solve the overall problem, though, that we're going to be in a trade shortage in the biggest kind of a way with all of these kinds of construction announcements.
I don't know if this is even a legitimate or a fair question to ask, but, from your knowledge of the working trades, so let's just say there's an opportunity to work on Beta Nord or Bull Arm or a wind project or whatever the case may be versus to sign up and work with a contractor building homes. Would workers have a preference? Because there's certainly going to be a lot of work on all fronts, but if you say, for instance, sign up for 3 years worth of construction jobs on one of the so-called mega projects, would that be more preferential to the skilled trades, or would they be happy enough to be just simply working on a contractor framing houses?
I think there's two streams of workers out there, and some choose to do one stream, some choose to do the other. I don't know that they necessarily cross over. Those who are on the projects like the project work. They like the shifts that they get. They like the ability to earn overtime, and it's a different kind of work. They could be working evenings and weekends and so on. And there's a group of workers that really enjoy that, and that's what they do. They make a career of going from project to project. Then there's another group of workers who much prefer the localized construction where they work, generally Monday to Friday, 8 to 4, 8 to 5, or whatever the case might be, and they get to go home and spend their evenings and weekends with family and do what they want to do. So it's two different types of workers for sure. But you will see crossover. There's no doubt about that. The big challenge for us, I think, is where are we going to get the trades? Because if you're going to go into the home building and you want to attract current trades workers, then there has to be an opportunity for long-term employment, not just to go with a contractor to build a house or two. No one's going to leave a project where they've got 2 or 3 years work ahead of them to take an opportunity for 6 months to build a house or 2 or 3. And I know I'm simplifying it, but I'm simplifying it just to make the point that it's really about the long-term security for the workforce, and workers will go where they have an opportunity to make money, obviously, and they have an opportunity for long-term employment so that they're not jumping from job to job every 3 or 5 or 6 months. But, I think there's two issues, Patty, that we really need to talk about. One is the ability to retain the trades workers that we currently have, because we've got projected some 5,900 retirements over the next 10 years. I mean, there's an opportunity to maybe retain some of those into the workforce. So that's one piece of it. And the second piece is really getting into the heart of how do we attract new people to the trades. And I've been talking about that for quite some time, and not a lot of people have been wanting to listen to it. But the reality is, right now, today is in front of us, and I think there's a couple of things that need to happen. One is that we need to do more work at the high school level to talk about trades and to get more work around maybe pre-apprenticeship kinds of training than we have currently for high school students. The second is, I've been saying this a long time. I think we need a provincial picture on this. I think we need a provincial strategy that involves Trades NL, it involves the Construction Labour Relations Association, the Construction Association, Home Builders Association. Everyone who has a vested interest in this needs to be at the table, and we need to be pulling on the same oar. That's the only way, I believe, that we're going to be able to get the resources to fulfill the requirements that we're seeing come at us for construction.
I think that's where I was going with, preference to go with the mega project versus home building, because there isn't a seasonal flair to building homes, and you can't just necessarily leave the construction season and be able to hop on one of the mega projects necessarily so. But, talk about exposure in high school. It's one thing to talk about the trades. I've said this on the program a couple times in the past. I think what we really need to do is to have them exposed to the trades, as opposed to simply saying, well, there's opportunities in the trades and you could be a millwright or electrician or a carpenter or a plumber or what have you. Actually expose them to some of the very basics, not just shop where you go in and build a birdhouse and paint it and give it to your mom. Some actual real life experience at, say, for certainly grade 12, because if you're just talking about it, that could be in one ear out the other, versus put a hammer in someone's hand or a pipe wrench in someone's hand to say, this is what it is, and here's some of the opportunities, and here's where you can work right here at home. I think there's two different things, talking about it and put your hands on it.
I couldn't agree more with you on that. And one of the projects that we've been pursuing for a couple of years is a trades exhibition hall, which is a project that mirrors what's happening right now in Nova Scotia with Nova Scotia Trades and the Construction Sector Council. And they have a hall established, and within the hall there's a cubicle sort of setup for every trade that the student may want to do at post-secondary studies. And schools can register to bring students into the hall, and there's actual trades workers on the floor, and they get them to do carpentry work or pipe fitting and plumbing work, elevator work, whatever trade they're interested in. There's an opportunity to spend a day there and get some hands-on work, either on one particular trade or on multi-trades. And we've been talking a bit about that to some of our partners here and to government, but I think that's an option for the East Coast for sure on the Avalon. The other piece they've done that I think it's a great idea is that they've got a mobile trades booth now, and they take it around. They have a truck purchased, and they take it around from school to school and different geographical areas of Nova Scotia. And that's the kind of thing I need. Mirroring what you're saying, I think that's where we need to be. It's more than just a trade show with a pop-up booth and you give information out in a pamphlet. Students and not only students, but it could be anybody. It could be you or me who wants to change a career and not sure what we want to do. People being able to get some hands-on for even a shortest period of time of a day or so to check it out, I think it's an important strategy that has to be a part of what we do going forward.
You mentioned that there's some 5,900 set to retire. Someone is peppering me with the question here for you about people who maybe are leaving a certain career in and around the age of 60 and opportunities in the trades. But what's the average age of retirement? And is there opportunities for folks who have, left one profession or another, have worked with their hands over the years, and maybe is it too late at a certain age in life to get involved?
So a couple of questions wound in there for sure.
There was.
Great question. No, that's fine. I'll try and hit them both. The average age, I don't have the exact number, but my best guesstimate is it'll be around 60. Give or take, maybe a little earlier for some, but a little older for others, but around 60, 61, I think would be an average age of retirement for us in the trades, first of all. Secondly, the answer is unequivocally no. There is no time that's too late to get into trades. If you're a civil servant or a teacher, someone in the public service at 55 and you want to retrain, or if you're 60 or 60, even 65, age is not the factor. It's your ability to do the work and your interest in doing the work. We've talked to lots of people now who are in their second and third careers who want to go back and go to one of our training halls through the College of Skilled Trades NL and retrain and go back to work. And no time is too late. I'd encourage anyone who's considering that change of career or second career to reach out. There's lots of opportunities available, and from the 9 or so years I've been here now, the skilled trades is a tremendous career for anyone. You make a good living, you meet a lot of good people, and you get to do a lot of things and see a lot of places and a lot of people.
Yeah, and I mean, in addition to swinging a hammer or a wrench, what have you, there's lots of administrative work and sales and that kind of stuff that's also directly involved with building these homes and all the rest of it. So it's not simply the tradesperson himself, because they have a lot of complementary moving parts like sales, like administrators and the like. So there's big opportunities. Darren, I'll give you the final thoughts. Anything else you'd like to add to the conversation?
Yeah, well, two things. Pick up on your last point. You're absolutely right. So anyone entering trades, especially if you're a second career person, I mean, there's lots of opportunities to be leaders, shop stewards, or forepersons on site, administrative types of work within the trade. So you're right on that, Paddy. I just want to echo that. There's lots of opportunities beyond just on the tools day in, day out. I guess the final message I would leave is what you and I kind of agreed upon throughout this, that there needs to be a strategy. The federal government has announced money to support small, medium-sized businesses to take apprentices on, and they've announced money to promote the trades. I think, regrettably, promoting the trades and what goes with that should have happened a couple of years ago. But having said that, I really think we got to put a lot of emphasis into a strategy that pulls all the stakeholders together in the province to figure out where we're heading with this, because we're still staring down the barrel of a lot of work coming at us on wind, hydrogen, hopefully more in the oil and gas sector. And now with this number of houses that have to be built, there's just no way we're going to keep up with it unless we have a strategy and we work together. 100%.
Darren, as usual, I appreciate the time.
Thanks, Paddy. Appreciate the opportunity. All the best to you and your listeners.
Same to you. Bye-bye. Here he goes. Bye. Darren King, Executive Director at Trades NL. Before we get to the break, we're going to get a bouquet. Line number 2. Reg, you're on the air.
Good morning, Mr. Daly. I'm going to call you Mr. Daly this morning because normally I call you Paddy, but today I'm calling this April 18th, 2024, Paddy Daly Day. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
You mightn't realise it, and you might consider yourself a celebrity.
No, I don't.
But I do. Well, I do, and there's a hell of a lot of seniors out there do, and a lot of people in general. And because I'll tell you why. There's a lot of people that don't come online and talk to you, but you got a vast, vast audience, and I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of people around the Bay that talk to me after I'm on Openline. And I've listened to Openline since Ron Pumphrey, Baz Jameson, Bill Rowe, George McLaren, and Randy Sims, all good, great people. But I'm telling you, you people do Newfoundland, just beautiful province of great justice. So as of today, I got the power to declare you happy Paddy Daly Day, April 18, 24. Now, all you people on the island, remember the date. So thank you, Paddy. And I got lots on my plate, but I'm going to leave it alone for today. I'm going to call you next week. Now I'm getting to the food fishery, but that's for another day. As of today, it's official. So thank you, sir, and you'll have a good day.
I appreciate the kind words, Reg. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Take good care. Bye-bye. So I don't know what people do to commemorate it. But anyway, that's pretty good. Let's take a break. When we come back, NL Housing in the queue, and there's a dispute with a neighbour about what? We'll find out. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Scott, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. It's good to talk to you guys. I appreciate you and the audience giving me the call this morning.
What's on your mind?
I'm a first-time caller. Well, I'm dealing with Newfoundland Labrador Housing. I've been dealing with since October, when my mother moved to collaborative care to go Bishop Gardens after she broke a hip. And ever since, they have been dealing with me, and they end up giving me an eviction notice for the end of this month and making me homeless. That is the story I want out there.
So, I'm sorry to hear about your mother. So she's moved into palliative care? Is that what you said? I'm sorry?
I said palliative care. I apologize. Collaborative care. Bishop's Gardens, where she moved.
Okay.
And I lived in this Newfoundland Labrador housing unit for 36 years. I'm the last member of the family. And the only reason they gave me the eviction is because they probably want the 3-bedroom unit back, and they decided to just say my mother owed unpaid rent and gave me the eviction back in January. And they haven't been helpful ever since.
So is there the opportunity to move to a downsized unit, or you're simply out?
I'm simply out at this point. Back in November, they were going to give me a new lease to the place and transfer me to one bedroom, but they decided to change their minds, trying to give the kind of housing benefit and all that. And I refused it then because I had a lot of questions and I thought I needed more info. But they decided then to just let me go and just say screw it, because being on income support with health issues and that, I just couldn't pay the monthly rent that my mother had based on with Canada pensions. So I was just really frustrated with all this.
Yeah, I mean, there are technical rules about how people are able to avail of Newfoundland Labrador housing, whether it be mobility issues and or the numbers of people living in certain size units, so 2 bedrooms versus 3 bedrooms. And I understand where they're going with that, but it's one thing to understand that people on the wait list, which is over 2,000, that might need a 3-bedroom unit, but that doesn't necessarily have to mean that the person who's leaving because they used to live with their mother is now out of luck, period. So did you ask them that direct question? Is there an opportunity to move into a smaller, more appropriate unit for a single person?
Yes, I did, even back in November, and they usually said, there's no stock available, as they put it, 1 bedrooms, and they said very recently, in order to get the Canada housing benefit, I have to find a 1 bedroom first in the private market, and there is nothing available. So they're literally pushing me to homelessness, which is the opposite of the initiative of the Comfort Inn to go take people out of transitional living and go into stable housing. So it just don't make sense the way they're doing it with me.
Yeah, because, I mean, if it's not a housing unit, we know the cost of rent, the vacancy rate in and around town, because Bishop's Gardens is right here in St. John's. That's Bishop's Gardens up where the whole high school was, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay, because the vacancy rate here in town is woefully low. And if you're talking about a single or a 1-bedroom studio or a basement apartment, they're just hard to come by, let alone when you talk about hitting the affordability targets.
Yeah, because I'm competing with, people immigrating in, students, working professionals, all that, and I have no disrespect to any of them, and I understand that they all need stable housing too, as we all do. But housing has been just combatant ever since. And I went to my Minister Siobhan Cody, her constituency assistant, and around early February, the gentleman reached out to housing, and the executive told him they would not evict me, and at the end of this month, and have the sheriff's officers and change locks and all that. But every week after, the housing would deal with me directly, and he would say, nope, you're evicted. We got no options for you, and tough luck to you, basically. And this information was even heard at the gathering place at one point with a caseworker here in the conversation. We reached out to the main housing officer, and the lady was just flabbergasted to hear what was said to her and myself on the phone. It was just unbelievable.
Yeah, I appreciate your plight here. So what options do you actually have? Any?
No, I mean, I'll be lucky if I could stay with my sister for a short term because, I'm the youngest of my siblings, and my sister and her daughter, they have their life and different things themselves, and they're in housing, and that would even probably affect her lease and everything else and stuff like that. So they don't have the space for me, let alone moving all this furniture and all that. I mean, there was, it's just a complete and utter mess. And I've been reaching out to Mr. Cody's office a lot, and I reached Mr. Hutton's office. I was waiting for an executive that works with Mr. Hutton since March 25th and heard nothing back. But his assistant, the lady, taught me, she was very polite as well, and she said, she can only do so much as a constituency assistant for her area. And I was supposed to be pushed over to housing, of course, and just nothing. And like I said, the only thing recently I heard from housing themselves is the individual gave the eviction, the lease compliance officer, and the gentleman said, well, you find a 1-bedroom apartment out there and we'll give you the Canada housing benefit. And that runs out 60 days. That was given back to me March 7th, and it runs out May 7th. But if they make me evicted in full, they can just wipe their hands of me at that point. They don't have to extend or anything like that or help after that. It's just like, yeah, whatever, you go on. it's such a mess the way it is.
So you say you're on social assistance, and I think you mentioned that you have a health concern. Is there any opportunities for you to maybe try to move away from needing social assistance in Newfoundland Labrador housing, like with the Employment Stability Program or any other training opportunities that are out there, or are you simply unable to work with whatever the severity of your health concern is?
I'm afraid, sadly, I haven't worked for almost 10, 15 years, since early 2000s. I mean, the combinations were both mental and physical health ailments. And I'm someone without a physician. That's so, like many, I got lost in the system, which is unfortunate.
If you were able to get yourself like a family doctor, do you get any ongoing mental health support?
Believe it or not, I recently checked back to my former psychiatrist I saw about 2017, 2018 for a while, and obviously we had things like COVID-19, the pandemic all happened. But now, of course, when you go back to any physician, you got to go through the referrals, red tape, the rhetoric. So by the time that would be any avail help, it would all be too late. I'd already be out in the street practically, which was unfortunate as well.
Yeah, of course it's unfortunate to say the least. So I don't have a list of available rental units, but I have people who are in the landlord business that many of them listen to this program, and sometimes when we have this type of call, they have potential options available. So if that comes to pass here this morning, we'll get the information to you, but until then, hopefully you find a spot. Even if you think you might be inconveniencing or jeopardizing your sister's lease arrangement, it's probably wise to figure that out before you start living there, and all of a sudden someone reports the fact that you're there, and next thing you know, she's getting evicted as well. So make sure you cover those bases. I know you need a place to stay, and hopefully you're able to do that, and hopefully it doesn't jeopardize her current arrangement. Thanks for your time, Scott. Good luck. Stay in touch.
Well, thank you so much, Patty, for hearing my story, and I appreciate everything you guys done, and take care and have a good day. Thank you.
The same to you, Scott. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, there's talks about World Energy GH2. Peggy's got a dispute with her neighbour. We'll talk about the results of the Fogo by-election. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Say good morning to the Executive Director at Cardinal. That's the Coalition of Persons with Disabilities, Nancy Reid. Nancy, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. Thanks for reaching out to me today or connecting with me. I really appreciate it. In the disability community in the country, we've been, raising some concerns over the last couple of days around the disability benefit that we're seeing nationally. And I'd like to offer a couple of thoughts to your listeners about that.
Sure.
The disability benefit is something that has been expected for some time, and it's federal money that is intended to be available to persons with disabilities in the country who are of working age and are unemployed or basically of low income. And we received information in the budget a couple of days ago that the amount that would be available for this benefit would be about $200 as a maximum for individuals. You can imagine that that's significantly less than the community was expecting. Again, this was intended to raise people out of poverty, to bring people up above the poverty line. And it's intended for those who, have barriers to employment and need the equitable funding, in ways that might be similar to what are some of the programs that exist currently, the Guaranteed Income Supplement for seniors, for instance, or the, what we used to call family allowance, the Canada Child Benefit for families with young children. The disability benefit is intended to raise people out of poverty, or at least support them in ways that are meaningful because of the barriers that they're experiencing financially. So I'm hearing from individuals in our province, and certainly hearing it with people across the country, that the amount that's being offered is just way too little, and it's not going to be able to benefit people in the way that it needed to be.
Yeah, so max out at $2,400 per year. I've heard from advocates around the country, they had a number in mind much closer to $1,000 per month, which there's a long way between $200 and $1,000. There's also age restrictions here. It's for only people ages 18 to 64. I assume the after 64 is because then you can rely on GIS, old age security, CPP and the like. But aging in is also a concern. But regardless of what age you are, we do know, we've seen extensive reports about, not only cost of living for quote unquote I'm not going to say able-bodied, people without any sort of disability, there's an additional cost of living expense associated with having a disability. So at $200 a month, woefully low, I would suggest. Even if they're talking about just how many billions it's going to cost over the course of 6 years, I think is the number that they're using, $6.1 billion over 6 years. It sounds like a big number when you break it down. And we had someone on the show yesterday say that across the country, the estimate is there's somewhere around 31 to 32% of Canadians will be eligible for this disability benefit. So that's a huge number of Canadians.
Yeah, and the problem that we're seeing again is the number of people who are eligible for this benefit. Again, we don't have all of the regulations yet. They still have time to identify and publish those. But what we're looking at right now is an expectation that to be eligible for this disability benefit, you must be eligible for the disability tax credit. And, for many years, people in our community have been speaking about the opportunities for people with disabilities to be denied eligibility for the disability tax credit. So the number of people who will be eligible as persons with disabilities will probably not reflect the actual number of people who should be eligible from our perspective. Disability tax credit was intended initially to lessen the amount of income tax a person would pay as a person with a disability. And what it's being used for in many ways, and this being one example, is that it's being used as an identifier, or I guess a label, or if you want, of a person's eligibility for a program. And that wasn't the intent of the disability tax credit when it was initiated, and certainly not the way that it's used primarily in our country today. But there are barriers to access in that way that we also really want to talk about and have been really concerned about for sure.
Yeah, it's also an example of just how slow government moves. The Canada Disability Benefit Act was first tabled back in the summer of 2022. It was passed in Parliament last year, but now we're just finding out what the numbers are. So on top of eligibility concerns and the low number associated with monthly payments, it's also a good example of, something that people obviously thought was required, and it took just about 2 years to even come up with a number.
And obviously the number needs to be reconsidered. It's just woefully inappropriate. Absolutely. I'll say that, again, another area that I'm concerned with, and because I'm echoing the voice of people we're hearing, in this province, Newfoundland and Labrador does not have a disability benefit per se. Some provinces and territories do, but ours does not. And so if I were living in Ontario, for instance, I'd be eligible for the disability benefit from the province. In our province, to be a person with a disability and unemployed within working age, the only opportunity you have is to be to be recipient of income support. And within the program of income support, of course, if you receive any other funds, you must report that, and those funds are deducted dollar for dollar from your income support payment, and that's standard. However, this disability benefit is intended to sit on top of any other funding that provinces would provide to its residents. So while we believe that that's going to be the case in this province, we're still hearing from people in the community about the uncertainty of that, the scare that, that other piece of funding that they're already receiving from the province will be cut if they receive this $200 or less from the disability benefit from the feds. So I'm going to be asking Minister Pike, as Minister for Children, Senior Social Development, responsible for income support program, to publicly reassure, residents of the province who might be eligible for this benefit that, the funding that they're currently receiving from province will not be changed in any way because of this benefit. But that is certainly a concern that we're hearing about from the province. No doubt.
Would you like to say anything else, Nancy, before I take another call?
No, I really appreciate the opportunity. And, at the Coalition, if people are having concerns, we'd love to hear from you. So you can certainly call us, 722-7011. We can only bring forward the concerns when we hear them. So, if people are having those concerns, we'd certainly love to hear it. And we're also available at info@cottonelle.ca.
Appreciate the time, Nancy. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Dave, where am I going here? I've kind of lost track. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Line number one, Carrie, you're on the air.
Hi, I'm calling because my cat is missing. She went missing on Friday night, April the 12th, while I was at work. She got out through an open window, and it's really out of character for her to be gone this long. So I'm kind of hoping, given the weather conditions, that somebody might have her inside. But I was hoping that I could get the opportunity, which I'm thankful for, to announce. She's a very timid cat. She's orange brown, orange, black, and white. And she's a small-sized cat, but she is 7 years old. She was the runt of her litter, so she never grew to be a big cat. And she's very timid. She's typically nervous around people, but where she's been out for so long now, I'm thinking that she may have approached somebody, or maybe even somebody has seen her in the area, or she might have wandered. She went missing from the McDonald Drive area. I just wanted to get that out there, and hopefully if anybody has seen her, they could reach out. My contact number is 709-727-1118.
Okay, 727-1118 in the McDonald Drive area here in the city. When did you say the cat went missing? What day?
Friday night. She went missing on Friday night. Yes, April the 12th. I've contacted all the pet services like the SPCA and the Humane Society and Heavenly Creatures, and nobody has brought her in. It was from the apartment buildings there on McDonald Drive. So I do have 2 cats. So while I was at work, they somehow got the screen out of the window, and both of them had gotten out, and the boy had come back, but Willa, who is the girl, she hasn't returned. And it's really out of character for her to be gone this long, and I'm getting really concerned. So I'm just, I wanted to get the information out there.
Fair enough, and let's hope that this call helps. So 727-1118. I'll give you one more opportunity to describe what the cat looks like, whether or not there's a collar or anything that we can help identify this feline.
Unfortunately, she got out without her collar on. She does typically have a collar and a harness, but she didn't have either on because she was indoors, and I took it off to give her a little bit of a break from it. She's a small-sized cat, and she's orange, black, and white. Orange, black, and white, small-sized cat.
Well, let's hope that this helps out. We have the number, and apparently Dave has a picture of the cat too, which we'll add to a social media post. So thanks for this. Fingers crossed.
Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a lovely day.
The same to you, Carrie. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, let's go ahead and take that break. Don't go away. Well, might as well press the button. Welcome back to the show. Is that a 5? Welcome back. Let's go to line number 5. Eugene, you're on the air.
Well, good morning, Patty. How are you this morning?
Okay, how about you?
Good, Patty, and I echo what my friend Reg Coombs just said. You're doing a wonderful job. You helped out a lot of people. And thank you for you and David and VOCM to give me the opportunity to get on and voice my concerns to the public. And, you know, Patty, I was just in Nashville, and I was out for me strut. And my phone in my rear pocket, and listened to VOCM and listened to the Openline show. So you're heard all around the world, Patty.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the call. What's on your mind this morning, Eugene?
What's on my mind? I want to congratulate my friend Jim McKenna, on such a wonderful victory, him and his team and the voters and the PC party for throwing a good election and winning by a major majority, as you know. It's a wake-up call, I do believe, Patty, for the Liberal Party. I was a Liberal for 45 years. Some time ago, I had to cross the floor. That's the right way to put it. The PC party was helping out my causes more than the Liberals were. They're just not listening. And you talk to the public around, they're just not listening. They are spending money, not wisely though. And so the proof is in the pudding right there. And I do believe we will take the Bay Work one. And you know what? If there was a general election now, Patty, she would go blue. And the reason is because of the way the province has been ran. You know, I've been working on different causes, as you know. I haven't had much luck with some, with a lot of them, actually, with the Liberal Party. The ministers will say in the Liberal Party, that it's because they agree with the causes that I've been working on, but they say it's because of the bureaucracy in the system. Well, boy, it's time for the bureaucracy to go. They have to change these people that don't listen to the general public and causes that's very important to the province. So, you know, So congratulations, Jim. I am sure you'll do a good job. You've got 16 months or whatever now to prove that, and I'm sure you will. And yes, you got something to get your teeth into already, because the Mayor Shea was on there and said that the Premier was out to Fogo, and he said that they would put an extension on the long term, which would be good for Fogo and Change Islands, because they have people there from Change Islands. And improvements to the water supply in Jobat, Sarm, Fogo, and Selim. So dig into it, Jim. Get that done for the people, and I'm sure 16 months' time, you will stand another good chance if you still want to run. Congratulations to Jim and the party, and have a good day, Paddy. I appreciate the time to get on there and do this.
Thanks, Eugene.
Have a good one, brother.
You too.
Appreciate it.
All the best.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I mean, it was a significant turnaround. Derek Bragg won with 2,500 votes. Sue Collins ran for the PCs in the 21 general election. She got about 1,500. This time around, McKenna, 3,500. Dana Blackmore running for the Liberals, about 1,000 less. So it was a significant turnaround. Let's go to line number 6. Peggy, you're on the air.
Good morning, Mr. Daly. How are you?
I'm okay. How about you?
Good, thank you. Happy Paddy Daly Day. Your boss says you don't have to come back after lunch.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's I get released at 12 noon. Peggy, you've shared an email with me, but go ahead and paint a picture. What's going on?
Okay. It is in regard to dispute with a neighbour, but that's not actually what I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about the response I've got in asking for help from local authorities in the town in dealing with it. I'm a retired veteran, as I sent in my little note there, and so I returned to one of the bays here in Newfoundland to live around family and stuff, and I have service-related PTSD, which I'm dealing with, and I thought I'd come back to this nice, quiet community, but I've run into some issues with some neighbors who are actually known criminals in town. Some of the things they've done to me, I'll just, in summary, is they tore down my fence and burned parts of it. They deal with me in an aggressive manner 2 weeks ago with a chainsaw. That I was fearful, and my neighbor was stabbing at the trees and yelling at me and being really aggressive. And I called the police, and I couldn't get anybody to come. I was shocked.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty bizarre picture you paint. I have no earthly idea why.
The truth is stranger than fiction, Paddy, I promise you. I didn't believe it myself, and as I started sharing my story on Facebook, and I was ashamed to do so because, I don't want to be putting stuff that seems silly on Facebook, but it got to the point where, the criminal activity was increasing, and there seemed to be no end to it, and when the cops won't come when you call them, and the fire department, because they were burning. Twice I called him because he was burning copper on his property, or actually he was burning it on my property. We'll get into that in a minute.
Why do people burn copper? That part of the story I didn't understand.
I think it's, okay, from what I'm understanding here in the Bay, if they can bring it, if they get so much, and somebody said a number of $300, I wouldn't be sucking in the smoke off copper for $300 myself, but I guess some people, like my neighbors who are living with no power for the last year and a half, they're not using it to pay the power bill, so I don't know what they're doing with it. I don't know if they have running water or not. I know they don't have hot water. When they first lost their lights, they abandoned a cat here when they left. They took 2 dogs. When they returned 7 months later, they returned with 1 dog. The kids were removed. They've broken into a multitude of houses in this local area as well as the surrounding communities. He's a well-known criminal, him and his girlfriend. And they've since moved in a young fellow who was living in the woods in a cabin he had made out of pallets, apparently. And my neighbor apparently saved his life because he was freezing to death. So we brought him to his house now, where I don't see how he's much better off, but they do sometimes run a generator, and being that I'm retired, and it doesn't bother me at night, but a lot of my neighbors work at 6 o'clock in the morning. Some of my neighbors are teachers, and he runs that generator till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and we call local law enforcement officer. He just says, can you try and not have it past 11? Even though calls and texts are sent to ask them to deal with it, I think they may have received their first ticket for an infraction yesterday. And the house is in the neighbor's name. It was left to him when his parents passed on 20 plus years ago, and not a cent of tax has been paid to the town since. And I'm having problems to get them to help me, the police and the fire. And just the responses, it's been really difficult. And with the fire situation, he lit a couch 20 feet from my house. And the following time I called, they didn't send a truck, they just sent a guy to look. And they permitted them to continue burning the copper that day. And when I called the fire chief to ask him about it, he said, that was my fault, I made a call. I said, okay, well, it wasn't a good call. My mom is 72 years old. She lives with me. We were both sucking down the smoke from copper the entire day. Now, again, they're at it. Yesterday, it was lit, and it still is burning as of right now since yesterday. A smoldering copper fire.
So they're burning the plastic coating off the copper wire. Okay.
Off whatever it's in, right?
So the plastic smoke is awful.
Right. Yeah. So, but the first 2 times I called, I noticed that somebody stopped in an old beat-up Jeep and told Buddy, using my name, Peggy called the fire department on you. We're coming. It turns out Buddy's a firefighter, but I didn't know who he was. So I've since identified him and brought that up to the chief, and the chief yelled at me that didn't happen. And I wasn't catching on to that he wanted me to be quiet and just take it. And I said, but it did happen. I saw it myself. I heard it myself. Mom saw it and heard it. The neighbor who was here saw it and heard it. And he said, you're not understanding. You're not listening. So when I listened, he yelled at me again that it didn't happen. And he said, matter of fact, I didn't send a truck this Saturday because the first 2 times you called when we got there was no fire. It was already out. This is stranger than fiction. It really is. Because I wouldn't agree with him and back down, all of a sudden, my calls are now nuisance calls, and the fires never happen, even though there's pictures and videos. The fires were above my roof. I wasn't even the only neighbor who had called. The responses, I just don't understand. I feel like I'm in the movie Anger Management. It's frustrating. I've been in touch with the town. I called my MP. I got no response. He hooked himself up to the power lines. I called the police about it. They responded 3 days later when somebody else called. When the power company came to shut him down and take all the wires away, they told us it was a really dangerous situation for us living around him. The lines weren't secure. They could have fallen into my yard. I have animals. I have a big dog now that I love, but I had to get for security because I feel helpless. I'm crying out for help, and I actually had to put it out on Facebook because I fear for my safety. I really do, and it's escalating. And I really don't know what to do. I called the fire commissioner, and they were famously excellent to me on the phone. They dealt with it. They were compassionate. They heard me. They told me they'd get back to me. I haven't heard back.
Well, people owe you an answer, and to deny that something took place when there's pictures and video of exactly that is just mindless. I don't know how that happens or how people can, consider that to be a fair response, because this is a legitimate concern. Peggy, I'm late for the news.
I'm not somebody who can take injustice, so this is like eating me at my very being. And what about the people who don't stand up for themselves in my community? This has taken on a life of its own now. I have to follow it through.
Absolutely.
Who else is suffering?
And if you have an update available in the near future, and hopefully a positive one, please let us know about it. I do have to go to the news.
Absolutely.
I appreciate your time this morning. Good luck with it. Keep in touch.
Thank you, Patty.
You're welcome.
Cheers.
Okay, bye-bye. You know what goes on? Like they say, the best neighbour, tall fence. Let's take a break. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number one and say good morning to the board chair of the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association. That's Derek Brown. Good morning, Derek. You're on the air.
Yes, hello. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Yes, thanks so much for having me.
So obviously a keen focus here provincially on housing and in the most recent federal budget. Lots of money to be thrown around, but let's start with this. Like they've, taken away HST for building apartment units and what have you. That's fine. But one of the things that we talked to Darren King from Trades NL earlier, talk about where we're getting the people to build it. But let's you and I start with trying to hit the affordability target. One of the provincial programs does come with your members building, but then rent will be applied based on Newfoundland and Labrador Housing Corporation. So what's the concern of you and your members about trying to hit that affordability target? Because it's one thing to build the $500,000 home, quite another to build a home that people can actually afford.
Yes, absolutely. And again, we're on day 2 of the release of this here now. So our association is very active in reviewing that and analyzing it. A lot of these programs, we need to evaluate how they fit our marketplace versus the Vancouvers, the Torontos, the Montreals of the rest of Canada, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, that's an important point because even inside that Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund, some $6 billion, that really only has those types of caveats or strings attached for population of cities of in excess of 300,000 people. So good point. So the initial assessment of what you've seen, whether it be on the affordability envelope or otherwise, what's the immediate takeaways?
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of positives. As you already said, we are in the multi-housing space now. Our members are here and ready to build these shovel-ready projects in our backyard. The critical items for us is having access to capital, removal of the various red tape, and being able to implement cheaper and faster build strategies. One of the most important things in particular is anytime federal policy comes down, we really need to work it with the municipalities. That's where the people live in the municipalities. So we need to ensure partnerships and clear lines of communication between the municipalities, the province, and the federal governments to ensure the success of this type of program.
Timelines are pretty key here because, housing starts in this province last year somewhere around 900. I'm not sure what the final number was. Nationally, it was around 232,000. But if they're talking about unleashing the opportunity to build millions of homes, some of that's going to be directly impacted by timelines, bureaucracy, red tape, duplication of inspections and all that type of stuff. How does that change? Because we're always going to need to do rough-in inspections and final inspections and those types of things. So what's pragmatic changes that can happen to speed up the timeline between evaluating a piece of property, designing the home, and building the home?
Well, it could be anything from, you're absolutely right. At the end of the day, we can't just churn out projects that haven't had proper quality control. So it is paramount that those safeguards that have been in place for the construction industry to ensure we build quality products and safe products for the public are still there. Now, are we able to reduce timelines for financing approvals within government? Are we able to speed up the rate at which environmental assessments, zoning applications, and permits are released to builders? Those are key areas. And when there are engineering or architectural consultants engaged as well, reducing the timeline for reviews of submissions of various shop drawings or other project-dependent documentation will all help move the needle of the project forward. But we cannot eliminate quality control checks on our projects, or that will just compound further issues.
I might be oversimplifying here, but would there be the possibility for something such as this? So, for instance, we've got builders who we're familiar with, we've done business with in the past, they have a reputation for quality and that type of stuff, to have a list of accredited builders as opposed to, everybody case by case as if it's the first time doing business with one other municipality or another. So would that be something that is actually workable, or is that just opening the Pandora's box?
Well, I think that's a great point, and I understand some of these reforms do include introducing a portfolio approach so builders can move forward on multiple projects at once, and launching a new frequent builder stream to fast-track the application process for proven home builders. So, again, the devil is in the details, and we really need some time as an association, as a province, to review how this can be executed and implemented in our backyard.
Then let's move on to the other one, which people might get tired of hearing, but we can talk about money and bureaucracy and all the rest of it, but it's the ability to get people that can actually build the homes. One thing to have a contractor who's the GC, but quite another to have all the skilled trades required to pull it off. How bad a situation do you and your members face right now?
Well, I was unable to catch Mr. King's discussion earlier in it, so forgive my redundancy if applicable. But it is a challenge. There's workers required for aging infrastructure. There's workers required for new infrastructure that goes beyond just housing. So we have a couple options available to us: either recruit and train new skilled workers from our province that are already here. The benefit of that is that they're here, they're localized, they probably already have access to health care, they may already have housing, they're stabilized and ideally ready to go to work. And then the other stream is, through immigration and foreign workers. So, and I understand that the government is looking to review their process on how that immigration unfolds as it relates to skilled trades. So it's definitely a multi-pronged approach to get the right people for the job.
Yeah, I mean, the federal government will, people will have genuine concerns about the numbers of people coming into the country, but there's also some of that focused areas of who should be prioritized. And they say tech and innovation, people in that field, they talk about healthcare workers and skilled tradespeople. So hopefully they're able to do a better job than they seem to have been doing in the last number of years. I'll give you the final thoughts this morning. Derek, anything else you'd like to add?
Well, our association, the NLCA, we build Newfoundland and Labrador. We've been doing it since 1968, and we're going to continue to do so. So we just need some time to analyze the budget, analyze the particulars, work with the key stakeholders in the municipalities, the province, and the feds to be able to make these projects a reality for the good folks of our province. Because I know one thing right now, we need to improve because it's not sustainable. We just need to increase our infrastructure and be able to take advantage of these opportunities.
Appreciate the time this morning, Derek. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye. It's Derek Brown, the board chair at the NLCA, the Newfoundland Labrador Construction Association. Let's take a break. When we come back, Mike's in the queue. He's with older workers of Newfoundland and Labrador. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Good morning, Mike Kehoe. You're on the air.
Hey, good morning, Patty. Patty, before I go into the topic of older workers, I'd like very briefly to talk hockey, if I may.
Sure.
Maggie Connors, I think her name is, the Women's Professional Hockey League with Toronto, I believe.
Yeah.
What a fantastic player. What a great player she is, and what a great future she has. And really enjoyed her watching her playing. And also, the NHL is sort of winding down now, and Newfoundland and Labrador has some really good representatives, some very fine young fellows in that league as well. Alex Newhook comes to mind first of all.
Well, Newhook had a pretty great year. 55 games, 34 points. That's his best season as a pro. Mercer had a pretty good season. He had around the same number of points, but he's 20 goals, so that's a nice accomplishment. Zach Dean got in 9 NHL games. Hopefully that's just the beginning of his pro career. And with Maggie, she also had a terrific career at the NCAA level. I mean, she's got a degree from Princeton. I mean, that's not bad.
Wow.
And she was on the development team for Team Canada recently, so she's got a shot.
Yeah, well, so they're all something to be proud of, and I think it's probably fair to give them some recognition. They give up a lot of their lives for that. They give up a lot of their teenage years and their formative part of their lives to be away and in training facilities and stuff like that. Not all of them make it like these are doing, so I think it's good to give them recognition. Patty, what I called about today is your conversations have been going on about the aging workforce, really. And I think where we have now some more projects coming on. Was it Mr. Darren Bent who represents Skilled Trades? Was that his name, I believe?
Darren King.
Darren King. I keep getting them mixed up. Both great voices. And he pointed out, that the different types and this kind of stuff. But like, where are you going to get the workers? A lot of these people now are aging. A lot of the tradespeople that went through back in the 70s, 80s, 90s are all aging. And to do the amount of work, there doesn't seem to be enough of them around to be able to meet it. In 2017, myself and another small group of people formed a volunteer group, self-funded. We buy our own copy, and we wanted to put a focus on the aging workforce in being able to continue to work when stay in the workplace, because either many of them need to continue to do that, they don't have pensions other than Canada Pension or OAS, or choose to do that. And they're usually people retired from government positions who have a reasonable pension and benefit plans, but need to top off or supplement earnings or have time they just want to kill. So there were a lot of things we looked at, and there was a lot of issues. Like, there's a lot of ageism that goes on with employers. They see the color of your hair. They know your age. They just don't want you. There's some employers have benefit plans like medical, dental, health, things like that, Patty, that will drop you when you reach a certain age. So if you want to continue, theoretically, I found myself in one situation. There were 8,000 employees in the company, and my medical, dental, vision, short and long-term disability were cut because of my age. And I said, how many of my age do you have working anyway? Well, that wasn't the point. The insurer was going to cut me, and they did. So those kinds of issues are on the go,
I do know. Look, there's a built-in judge a book by its cover kind of concept here, isn't there? Because if you're a grey-haired applicant, I imagine, I can't put my thoughts into the employer's heads, but I would imagine their concerns are, well, their training, their background isn't necessarily conducive to today's modern work environment. They're more likely to be sick. They're more likely to be contrary. They're more likely to be something that they don't want. When, in fact, that's simply just looking at a resume and saying, oh, you're what? 58? Sorry, go bottom of the pile. Yeah. So there's probably a lot of misconceptions about the value that people can bring to the workforce.
The aging workforce, it's actually the opposite for most of them. They bring skills, obviously. They bring life and work experiences. They're great mentors. Most of them are past the time in their lives where they're trying to be the next boss. So their goal is to help other people become the next boss. They show up. These are older workers. But the employers do have a point in that many of them are not up on today's technology, Patty. And really, they can't access the skills enhancement and training necessary for them to be relevant in a lot of the jobs today. Now, I'm not talking about tradespeople. Tradespeople are different. But these would be the administrative, which is already taking a hit through AI. Particularly women, Patty. Most women did not go into the trades until fairly recently. So most of those do not have high earnings pensions built up over the years. Many of them came through administrative and different types of work associated with women. Yet here we are at a certain age in their life, and if they apply for a job, the employer looks at them and says, well, you don't have the skills to do it. And you know what, Patty? The skills are not available. The skills enhancement training is not available. They're not supported by the province of Newfoundland and Labrador or by the federal government. They're not there. They target new Canadians. And I'm not criticizing that. I'm very supportive of New Canadians. They'll target temporary foreign workers. They'll target youth, which is great. I mean, well, I have that. They target particularly what they call targeted equity groups, 2S LGBTQ, things like that. But they will not target older workers, particularly women, who now find themselves with Canada Pension and OAS, no benefits plans, some starting to come in for dental and pharmacare, but no dental plans, and no money to be able to acquire the training. But there's not one government program out there, Paddy, federally or provincially, that identifies their issue. Not one.
You specified women there. What's behind that? Is there something in particular?
Well, most of it in the interaction since 2017-18, we've done a number of projects. One with the St. John's Board of Trade and the Seniors Advocate, and a few others programs that we've done. We've partnered with and things like that. But it's become obvious to us that many of the larger portion of the aging population who must survive on Canada Pension or OAS alone are women. And that's because many of them worked in jobs that were not really well-paying jobs because of that proverbial glass ceiling that they faced most of their careers. They unless they were in a government job or one of the large corporations where there was maybe a union supporting them and enabled benefit packages, most of them have nothing to supplement, and so now here they are trying to eke out a cost of living. Even like to buy food, to buy gas, to have a pet is completely out of the thing nowadays. And women, when it comes to getting into new jobs, it's our experience that they get treated worse than men. Now, men have it bad. Don't get me wrong. I'm not downplaying that. So I think it's easy for them to feel rejected and abused. And what an abused person does is they don't do. They tend to shy away from showing up in the workforce. So we found that as big issues in all of the work that we did, Patty. So yeah, women are a large component. Yet government will not do any meaningful data studies to identify it. We all know it, but they lump it all in together. And because if they do the data studies, they'll have to act on it. And so while we find the staff at the provincial department, for example, CSSD, I think it's Children, Seniors, Social Development, may have changed now, Housing, I think it's gone. But they're wonderful staff, but the darn ministers flipping over like a coin, like somebody's flipping a coin in their hand. They come in, they get there for a couple of months, they want to make changes, they're gone. They come in, they get a couple of months, they want to make changes, they're gone. So the aging workforce is not, most of the union guys and girls who have pensions, who supplement their Canada pension, they have a level of comfort and that they can exist on. So it's not a big issue for them. But for a great many others, a huge amount and an increasing amount, they can't afford to live and they need to continue to work. Opportunities are not there for them. Barriers are there, and governments, federally, provincially, are not addressing them, just not addressing the issues in any meaningful way. And they don't want to hear that. When we tell them that, we get an eye roll, which in our case, we're an advocacy group. An eye roll is a sign of success because we're an awareness-creating group. But they're not doing anything. They're really not putting that training in there. I challenge anybody listening to you this morning to this great program on Petty Daily Day. I'd like them to go to any of the institutes and have a look. First of all, the cost of any of the training is completely out of whack for any of these people, most of them, particularly women. Again, that's the way it is. It's not fabricating, that's the way it is. That's just the way it came up in our society.
And if you add to the fact that so many people are pretty much forced financially to continue to work into their senior years, given cost of living concerns and everything else that people have been talking about, then it just makes sense that if we know that's the reality for a significant swath of seniors across the country, maybe acknowledging that a leg up to get back into the workforce is beneficial to everybody, including those individual seniors. Because if people are simply going to be reliant on a fixed income that is not being indexed to the tune of the cost of living increases, at some point what we have are people are less well, or they have a certain more prevalent and prominent illness, which of course is the most expensive thing we can ever talk about, versus be active and healthy and bringing money in and paying their bills and eating properly and all the rest of those things. I think there's an argument to be made with, if more and more people have to work later and longer in life, maybe there's an opportunity for the government to acknowledge it, understand it, and do something about it.
Yeah, right now their focus is on giving us a better bus to a supermarket, or getting us a better game of lawn darts, or a better game of cards, or, sort of warehousing them. But many of them need to work. Patty, I'm going to clue up with one other thing, little story, if I may. I went into a meeting with a government, let's call it leader, in the opposition offices. They couldn't get me out of the office fast enough. It was obvious to me, and they as much as said so, they did not want to deal with this issue because they felt it would make them look bad, because their focus should be on young people. Their focus should be on new Canadians. Their focus should be on women. Their focus should be on, And I said, yeah, that's all very important, but we're looking at age. We're looking at an aging workforce. So, I walked into a union office. We spend all our lives, he said to me, trying to retire. And you're talking to us about keeping working. We don't want to talk to you. So that's the way it is. It's a wonderful conversation. Thank you, Patty.
Appreciate your time, Mike. Thank you. Take care. There you go. Mike Keogh with the Older Workers of NL. Let's take a break. When we come back, there was something happening in the House of Commons yesterday that hadn't happened since 1913. Christian Firth, who was one of the founding partners at GC Strategies, was admonished by the Speaker. George wants to talk about that right after this. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back. Let's go to line number 4. Good morning, George. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I watched the live proceeding yesterday of the demolishment of Christian Firth.
Yep.
No, I figure it was historic. Second one since 1913, and boy, I wasn't surprised about what I seen.
Yeah, not really. Let's just set the stage for people. So this is very rare that a private citizen would be brought in to be admonished by the Speaker. R.C. Phillips, I think, was the man's name back in 1913. Since then, there have been 3 other people been reprimanded or admonished by the Speaker. Ian Waddell, Keith Martin, who were both MPs. And in 2021, Ian Stewart, who was the President of the Public Health Agency of Canada. And that was about not relaying documents to the Parliament Committee regarding the firing of the 2 scientists at the National Microbiology Lab in Winnipeg. And now Mr. Firth. So what did you make of it?
It was a nice beginning, but until the House Speaker for the Liberals stood up, and then it became historic in a different sense. The cover-up, Patty, the corruption, this Liberal Party of Canada is unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I see. Look, this is not the first contract that GC Strategies has done with the government either about the creation of the ArriveCAN app, which I thought was unnecessary to begin with. We don't even know how much it costs. The Auditor General of the country estimates around $60 million. There's as much corruption inside that little firm as there is in the government too, I would suggest, because they're bad actors.
Yeah, there's a lot of bad actors seems to be in the federal government, bureaucrats. Patty, I don't know how they sleep at night, but I guess they're rich, so they can sleep pretty good. Unbelievable. And our own Liberal MPs, Patty, it's a shame of what they're doing to the people of Canada, Newfoundland. They don't listen to the people. I'm going to use, I'm not going to say his name. I'm going to say the Prime Minister of Canada. I'm going to use one of his slangs. Why should we tolerate these people? Why should we tolerate these Liberal MPs running amok of this country? Why?
Well, I suppose because people voted for him in the last general election. Whether or not they'll hold their seats in the next one remains to be seen. So is there something specific that you think that they're doing other than things like procurement? Because this is a major problem. They started by asking Mr. Firth about his mental health issues, which was sort of a strange place to start. They talked about the number of government officials that he had dealt with and whether or not there was overly restrictive and heavily favoured strategy to award a $25 million contract to his own firm. So anything in particular you're talking about beyond this ArriveCan story, which is a big one, but there's lots more to what's happening in the country.
Yeah, that is just mostly like, the Liberal Party in committees. He's been at 3 committees now, Christian Prince. He's been at 3 committees, and he's been lying on the stand, and he's been holding with the information. And just a cover-up by the Liberals trying to shut down committees. And yesterday, he tried to shut down that historic moment. Again. So there is a cover-up there, Patty. But what are they covering up? And who are they covering up for? And there's got to be a minister involved. There's a minister involved in all this that needs to come out. And it has to be brought to justice. Has to be.
I don't know what justice looks like necessarily. But no question. I mean, and it starts with the Prime Minister. He's been involved in a variety of scandals and has been taken to task by the Ethics Commissioner, I think the total of 7 times in the last 9 years, which is very real. And most of it is of his own doing. Whether it's negligence, incompetence, or corruption, I'll leave that to people to assign their own label. But his polling numbers are so woeful. It really is a question that Liberals are also asking themselves is, why is he hanging on? Because he's absolutely become a detriment. He's a burden to the party at this point. So it's really strange what's going on in other parties in years past. If their leader was failing so miserably in the polls, and I know the polls are not the be-all and end-all, and we're still going to have to hear what other parties have to offer, because at this moment in time, we don't really know. It's basically, I'm not Justin Trudeau, is what they're campaigning on, and that might be enough, I don't know. But it's a wonder why he's simply hanging on. I guarantee you, there's more members than only Ken MacDonald, who kind of backpedaled on his comments as well, but there's got to be tons of members of the party, whether it be elected or otherwise, they're thinking, why? What is happening here? How come he's hanging on?
Patty, I don't know, Patty. Like I said, it's got to be where there's smoke, there has to be fire. So I'm going with cover-ups and corruption, and the Liberal government, federal, and I believe and provincial too. There's cover-up between the provincial Liberals and the federal Liberals, and when it's all said and done, if we had really good investigative journalists, I think they'll find a lot of corruption in this GH World Energy fiasco that's facing the people of Newfoundland and Labrador.
George, I appreciate the time. Would you like to say anything else?
No, that's about it, Patty.
Thanks for the call.
You for your time.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Dave, will I take a break on time and come back for these other calls? Okay, let's check in on the Twitter box. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Actually, someone just asked an interesting question. Have we ever taken the show on the road or had a live event where people are in attendance? We have several times. One came to mind. We did one at MUN for a bunch of political science students and other people in the general community. We did one at, what's that place called on Barnes Road, Dave? Not the Lighthouse, anyway, it eludes me at this moment in time. And we also took Back Talk on the road there a number of years ago. We did 5 live shows in 5 different towns. Yeah, the Lantern, exactly, Dave, on Barnes Road. Yeah, we took Back Talk out on the road. Myself and Sean Bashaw were out there. It was a pretty interesting experience, to be honest with you. But yeah, that's the answer to that question. Let's take our final break of the morning. When we come back, Kathy wants to talk about her Veteran Brothers Home Care. Bob Gillard, he's the president of the BIS, the Benevolent Irish Society, and then we'll speak with you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Kathy. You're on the air.
Good morning, my love. How are you this morning?
Doing grand, thanks. How about you?
Oh, not too bad, I suppose. As I was talking to you in 2023 about my brother, he was suffering with a lot of illness, and we kept taking him back and forth to Carbonear, as you know. And he had his heart shocked twice. The second time he had a shock, I was in the room with him. I wouldn't leave. It got to the point where in November, I called my drugstore and I asked them for some advice. I said, like, I know he's in a hard way. What would you do? And she says, my love, she says, if it was me, I would take him to St. John's into the health science. So we took him into the health science. And you know what they told us in there after 28 days staying in there?
What?
They got him too late. They got him too late. And he died. And his skin was as yellow as you could be. They were going to send him to Toronto, but the doctors up there said that he was too far gone. So I want to thank the medical team, and I want to thank Carboneer for what they did do. But most of all, I want to thank our government, because they have let our veterans down and our people down.
Kathy, obviously
and they
you're
need to get their act together.
Fair enough. Obviously you're upset, but when they said we got to him too late, can you tell me exactly what that means?
That means that if they'd have got him when he was supposed to go in town, they would have been able to do something for him. But because his liver was shut down, his kidneys were shut down, they put him on dialysis, but they waited until the very last minute to put him on dialysis, and we were asking it. And my niece went in to see him, and the last thing she's going to see is she's going to see a dying man sitting in a hallway with his hospital gown down around his shoulders trying to eat. And he was not in a stable mind. And she had to leave him there because she only had that one ride to go in. And we went in the next day, and the nurse or the doctor, the heart doctor, turned and told us that there's nothing that they could do. If they turned when they tried to revive him, they would bust up his body because his body was broken. And I don't know why they never did what they were supposed to do. And she said she don't know why he was not sent to St. John's. Because if he was sent in there, they would have been able to help him. 59 years old, donated his life, gave his life to Canada, along with other veterans. And it's shameful of our health care system and all the problems out there that people have. And Patty Daly, I want to thank you for being my sounding board, because I had to lash out at someone and I couldn't do it to family members or anything else. So I just had to turn and call you and get this out on the air. If anybody goes to Carboneer Hospital, he picked up a very bad bowel infection. And with his body being so weak and everything else, there was no coming back. And I think he knew he was dying. But I never told him. It was so horrible. And now his wife and his son, they have to sell their home that he worked so hard for. His daughter was moving from Alberta to come down and look after them, along with her son. But John is no more.
I'm sorry for your loss, Kathy, and it's really tragic how it unfolded regarding the timeline for getting the care he required, and they didn't get to him in time. It's just a terrible tale, and I appreciate you making time for us this morning. And if we can be your sounding board, we're happy to do exactly that. Would you like to say anything else, Kathy, before we say goodbye?
He did write an email to you, and he wanted me to send it along. Now that everything is all over with, I would like to have the opportunity to send that to you.
Okay.
And you read it.
I will.
Because he said he admired you because I admired you. And he wanted to tell his story.
Well, please do send it. My email address is a pretty simple one. It's just openline@vocm.com, so please send it along.
Thank you very much, Patty Daly.
You take good care of yourself, Kathy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Man. Let's go to line number one. Say good morning to the president of the Benevolent Irish Society here in the province. That's Bob Gillard. Bob, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Hi, Bob.
How are you doing today?
Not too bad, thank you, sir. How about you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for taking my call. I'm calling this morning just to promote a course that we're putting off starting next week. One of the objectives of the BIS is the promotion of Irish and Newfoundland culture and heritage. So in that vein, we're putting off a course which is 4 sessions over a 4-week period in Irish Newfoundland history, or what we're going to call the Irish in Us. So it's going to look at, in the first week, the Irish emigration to Newfoundland, what part of Ireland and the counties that the people came from, why they came here, mostly to work in the cod fisheries at the beginning, and then where did they settle in Newfoundland? And we know that the Southern Shore, St. John's, and the Cape Shore were certainly big areas where the Irish settled. So that'll be talking about the first week. The second week will be looking at the establishment of the Irish in Newfoundland, their religion, where they were involved with, association life, politics and nationalism, focusing on like I said, the Irish Catholicism in Newfoundland, the BIS and other ethnic associations that they joined, and then how they became in Irish Newfoundland politics in the 19th century. So that'll cover week 2. And the third week will be looking at what we call Irish Newfoundland nationalism. So how did the Irish, the second generation, third generations, look back on Ireland with their fight for home rule, their ties with the British Empire, also the rise of what we call Irish republicanism in Newfoundland. That would encapsulate, again, the succeeding generations looking back and wanting to see Ireland have their freedom and their right to self-determination. And then finally, in the 4th week, is what we call the Irish in Us, and this looking at in modern-day Newfoundland, from covering responsible government to federation, talking about genealogy, how folks can trace their roots, and looking at some of the diaries of Ali O'Brien. Ali O'Brien was a well-known farmer, historian, and promoter of Irish language in Newfoundland. And he began keeping diaries in the 1920s and 1930s, focusing on farming in the Freshwater Valley area, and still the ties with Ireland through his own family and others. So that's a kind of a capsule of the whole thing over a 4-week period.
Sounds great. You know, we do indeed very much consider ourselves a very Irish population. I don't know what numbers you use, Bob. You know, the province is primarily British, but of course, I think there's somewhere around 21% of the population is of Irish heritage. Is that a number that you use?
I think it's pretty more than higher than that, Paddy. I think it's probably around 45%. Looking back through history, if the settlements and the numbers that they give for census, at one time was pretty well 50-50 Irish and English population, and maybe some Scottish, but it was pretty close, 50-50. The Irish started coming here before 1800 for sure, going back and forth actually working in the migratory fishery. But after 1800, permanent settlement was allowed. So between 1800 and 1830, there was over 30,000 can emigrate to Newfoundland from Ireland. So that was a big number back then. Our records show that in the year 1806, there were just 4,000 people in Newfoundland, St. John's. So there was a big growth in the following 30, 40 years. And, of course, as well, the English settled here besides the Irish. So it was pretty much close to a 50-50 population of both English and Irish heritage.
Yeah, fair enough. And I don't know what the number is. I remember, and this just comes to mind from the 2016 census, is that it was around 37.5% British, 20.7% Irish, somewhere like that, 6.8 or something percent Scottish, and about 5% French. But irrelevant. The BIS is an organisation near and dear to my heart, and of course, we are of Irish heritage in my family, obviously. Bob, you want to give out any more quick details before we run out of time?
Yeah, sure. So the course starts next Tuesday, April 23rd, and runs till May 14th, over 4 weeks. It's $100 to attend the full course, and folks can just come that night and register and pay their fee, and away to go. I
appreciate your time, Bob. Good luck with it.
Okay, and we're at 30 Harvey Road, by the way.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks for your time, Paddy.
You're welcome, Bob. All the best.
You too now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, there we go. Good show today. Big thanks to all hands who support the program, and we will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you want to get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.